The grand halls of the Valorian Imperial Palace had never looked more beautiful than on this night. Thousands of crystal lights hung from the ceiling like frozen stars. The marble floors reflected the glow of 100 floating lanterns. Noble families from across the empire had gathered for the most important event of the year, the annual bonding ceremony. Princess Alith Vothan stood in her designated alcove and watched the festivities unfold before her. She wore a gown of deep purple silk that should have made her look regal. But she knew what everyone was looking at instead. They were looking at her skin. They were looking at the faded markings that covered her arms and neck. Among her people, these markings were everything. Bright and vivid markings meant strong blood. They meant worthy genetics. They meant a future worth investing in. But Elith's markings had been pale since birth. They looked like watercolors left in the rain. To the Valorian nobility, she was damaged goods. She was a curse wrapped in royal silk. The ceremony began with great fanfare. Emperor Thalaverthan sat upon his throne and watched as noble houses presented their heirs. One by one, young nobles approached the imperial children to request courtship. Elith's older sisters received dozens of petitions each. Her brother was surrounded by eager suitors. The hall buzzed with excitement and political calculation. Then came Elith's turn. The first noble heir approached her alcove. He was tall with brilliant blue markings that glowed like neon lights. He took one look at Elith's faded skin and turned away without a word. The second did the same. So did the third. And the fourth. Each rejection was a small death. Each turn back was a knife in her heart. But Alith did not cry. She had learned long ago that tears only made things worse. She stood with her spine straight and her chin high. If they wanted to see her break, they would be disappointed. From across the hall, Ambassador Park Jun-seo watched with growing confusion. He was a human diplomat, newly assigned to the Valorian court. He did not understand much about Valorian customs yet, but he understood cruelty when he saw it. Why does no one approach the princess in purple? He asked his aide. The aide, a nervous young man named Thomas, shifted uncomfortably. That is Princess Alith, sir. She is considered unmarriageable. Why? Her markings are faded. Among Valorians, this is seen as a genetic defect. A curse, they call it. Park frowned. He looked at the princess again. She was beautiful by any standard he knew. Her silver hair fell past her shoulders like moonlight. Her eyes were the color of amber honey. And yes, her skin markings were pale, but they created patterns like frost on a window. He found them rather lovely. She looks perfectly healthy to me, Park said. It is not about health, sir. It is about tradition. About bloodlines. No noble house wants to mix their genetics with hers. The ceremony continued. More nobles came and went. None stopped at Elith's alcove. The whispers in the hall grew louder. Park could hear fragments of conversation. Cursed blood. Unworthy of continuation. The emperor should have hidden her away. High Matriarch Selina Verkith, the head of the most powerful noble house, finally approached the center of the hall. She was an imposing woman with markings so bright they almost hurt to look at. She raised her hand, and the room fell silent. I speak for the noble houses of Valoria, she announced. We have completed our considerations. Every imperial child has received petitions save one. All eyes turned to Alith. It is the formal position of the assembled houses that Princess Alith Vothan is unfit for bonding. Her diminished genetics pose an unacceptable risk to any bloodline. We hereby declare that no noble house shall petition for her hand. Not this year. Not any year. The words echoed through the silent hall. It was a death sentence for any hope of a normal life. Valorian society revolved around family bonds. Without a bonding partner, Alith would remain forever outside. Forever alone. forever marked as worthless. Emperor Thaler closed his eyes for a moment. Pain flickered across his face, but court rules prevented him from interfering. The noble houses had the right to make this declaration. He could not force anyone to accept his daughter. Alith felt the weight of 1,000 stares. She felt the satisfaction radiating from Selene. She felt her sister's embarrassment and her brother's pity. But she would not break. Not here. Not now. She stepped out of her alcove and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps were the only sound in the vast hall. Every noble watched her go. Some sneered. Some looked away. None offered comfort. Park watched her walk. He saw how she kept her head high despite everything. He saw how her hands trembled slightly at her sides, the only sign of the storm inside her. And he felt something stir in his chest. It was not pity. Pity was useless. It was something else. It was respect. This woman had just been publicly humiliated in front of her entire civilization. She had been declared worthless by every powerful family in the empire. And still she walked with dignity. Still she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Park had met generals and presidents and kings. He had seen courage in many forms. But this quiet strength impressed him more than any battlefield heroism. "Sir," Thomas whispered urgently, "you should not stare. It is considered rude to show interest in her." "Why?" "Because she is cursed. Associating with her could damage your diplomatic position." Park did not respond. He simply watched until the princess disappeared through the golden doors. Later that night, Park stood on his balcony at the human embassy. The Valorian moons hung heavy in the sky. He could not stop thinking about what he had witnessed. "Thomas," he called to his aide, "I want you to find out everything you can about Princess Alith. Her interests, her education, where she spends her time." Thomas looked horrified. "Sir, I strongly advise against this. Humans should not involve themselves in Valorian internal matters. It could damage the alliance negotiations." Park turned to face his aide. His expression was calm, but his eyes held something dangerous. "Just get me the information," he said. "That is an order." Thomas swallowed hard and nodded. He knew that look. It was the look Ambassador Park got when he had decided to do something. And when Park decided to do something, nothing in the galaxy could stop him. In her chambers across the city, Princess Alith sat alone in the darkness. She had finally allowed herself to cry. The tears fell silently down her faded cheeks. She had always known this day would come. She had always known she would be rejected. But knowing and experiencing were two different things. She wiped her eyes and looked out her window at the distant lights of the human embassy. She wondered what the strange newcomers thought of tonight's spectacle. Did they laugh at Valorian customs? Did they pity the cursed princess? She did not know that one human was thinking about her right now. She did not know that her life was about to change forever. She did not know that sometimes the boldest steps come from the most unexpected directions. All she knew was the weight of her loneliness and the small stubborn flame of hope that refused to die. 3 days had passed since the ceremony. The Valorian court had returned to its normal rhythms of politics and gossip. But Ambassador Park Jun-seo could not forget what he had seen. The image of Princess Alith walking alone through that silent hall stayed with him like a song he could not stop humming. He sat in the human embassy's medical wing with Dr. Yoon Hana, the station's xenobiologist. Screens around them displayed complex genetic diagrams and cellular structures. Park had asked her to research Valorian markings, and she had worked through the night. "This is fascinating," Dr. Yoon said as she pointed to a holographic display. "The Valorians have completely misunderstood their own biology." "What do you mean?" "These faded markings they consider a curse? They are actually a sign of enhanced cellular regeneration. Look at these readings. Individuals with pale markings heal faster. They age slower. Their immune systems are stronger. Park leaned forward. So the princess is not defective? Defective? She is the opposite. On Earth, we would consider her genetics a gift. Scientists would study her. She would be celebrated, not rejected. Park sat back and let this information settle. The Valorians had rejected their princess over nothing more than superstition. They had thrown away a treasure because they did not understand what they had. This is what happens when tradition replaces science, Dr. Yoon continued. They have believed this cursed nonsense for so long that no one bothers to question it anymore. Can you prepare a formal report on this? Of course. But Ambassador, you should be careful. The Valorians will not appreciate a human challenging their beliefs. They are very proud people. Park nodded. He understood the risks, but he could not simply ignore what he now knew. That afternoon, Park decided to take a walk through the Imperial Gardens. These gardens were open to all diplomatic staff as a gesture of goodwill. He told himself he simply wanted fresh air. He told himself he was not hoping to encounter anyone specific. He was lying to himself, of course. The gardens were magnificent. Strange flowers in colors he had never seen filled every corner. Trees with silver bark twisted toward the sky. Fountains sang with water that glowed pale blue. And there, in a small pavilion near the eastern wall, sat Princess Aleph. She was alone as always. She knelt beside a bed of delicate white flowers, tending to them with careful hands. She did not notice Park approaching until a shadow fell across her work. She looked up. Her amber eyes widened with surprise. "Ambassador Park," she said. Her voice was guarded. "You are far from the diplomatic quarter. I was exploring the gardens. They are quite beautiful." Alice stood and brushed soil from her hands. Most diplomats prefer the Western Gardens. There are fewer chances of encountering undesirable company there. Park understood what she meant. She expected him to leave now that he had seen her. She expected him to run from the curse. Instead, he sat down on a nearby bench. "What kind of flowers are these?" he asked. Alice stared at him. She seemed completely confused by his behavior. "They are moon tears. They bloom only at night." "Do they have a scent?" "A faint one, like honey and rain." Park nodded as if this was the most interesting thing he had heard all week. He did not mention the ceremony. He did not offer pity or awkward sympathy. He simply sat there like a man enjoying a pleasant afternoon. Aleph did not know what to make of him. Valorians always wanted something. They always had hidden motives. But this human just seemed genuinely curious about her flowers. "You are strange," she finally said. "I have been told that before. Why are you here? What do you want?" Park considered the question. "Right now, I want to learn about moon tears. They do not exist on Earth. We have nothing that blooms only at night. That is all?" "That is all." Alice sat down slowly on the other end of the bench. She kept a careful distance between them. But she did not leave. And for the first time in days, she felt something other than pain and loneliness. She felt curiosity. They talked for an hour. Park told her about Earth, about its blue oceans and green forests, about rain that fell from gray clouds, about seasons that changed the whole world 4 times a year. Aleph listened with growing fascination. She had never met anyone who spoke to her like this, like she was a normal person, not a curse to be avoided. When the afternoon sun began to fade, Park stood to leave. "I walk here most mornings," he said casually, "in case you ever want to tell me more about moon tears." He left before she could respond. Aleph watched him go. Her heart was beating strangely in her chest. She did not understand this human. She did not understand why he had not looked at her markings with disgust. She did not understand why he treated her like she mattered. But she wanted to understand. And that desire was the first spark of something new. Over the following week, they met every day. Sometimes, Park brought Earth literature for her to read. Sometimes Elith shared ancient Valorian poetry. They discussed philosophy and science and art. They laughed at each other's terrible jokes. For Alith, these meetings became the brightest part of her day. She began to look forward to mornings in a way she had forgotten was possible. Park made her feel seen. He made her feel valued. He made her feel human, or whatever the Valorian equivalent was. But the court was watching. Whispers spread through the palace like poison. The human spends time with the cursed princess. He contaminates himself with her company. This is an insult to Valorian traditions. High Matriarch Celine heard these whispers and decided to act. She summoned Park to her private chambers, an unusual move that carried significant political weight. When Park arrived, he found her waiting with cold eyes and a colder smile. "Ambassador Park," she said, "I have heard troubling rumors." "Have you?" "They say you have been spending time with Princess Alith." "I hope these rumors are exaggerated." "They are not. The princess and I have become friends." Celine's eyes narrowed. "This is unacceptable. You are damaging your diplomatic position. More importantly, you are giving false hope to someone who has none. With respect, High Matriarch, I decide who my friends are. You do not understand our ways. Alith is cursed. Any association with her will bring misfortune. I am warning you, as a favor, leave her alone." Park met her gaze without flinching. "And if I refuse?" "Then there will be diplomatic consequences. Trade negotiations may become more difficult. Certain privileges may be reconsidered." She paused. "Think carefully, Ambassador. Is one broken princess worth your entire mission here?" Park stood silent for a long moment. Celine smiled, thinking she had won. But then Park did something she did not expect. He smiled back. "Thank you for your concern, High Matriarch. I will certainly think about what you have said." He turned and walked out. But they both knew he had not agreed to anything. And Celine realized with a cold feeling that this human might be more troublesome than she had anticipated. That night, Park sat at his desk writing a message to his superiors on Earth. He reported everything: the princess, the curse, and the political pressure. He asked for guidance but made his own position clear. He would not abandon Alith, whatever it cost him. The Emperor's birthday was the grandest celebration of the Valorian year. The throne room had been transformed into a sea of light and color. Nobles from every corner of the empire gathered in their finest clothes. Foreign dignitaries from a dozen worlds stood in honored positions. The air itself seemed to shimmer with importance. Princess Alith stood in her usual place, far from the center, close to the shadows. She wore a simple silver gown that matched her hair. She had not wanted to come. These events always reminded her of everything she could not have. But attendance was mandatory for all imperial children. She searched the crowd for Park. They had not spoken in 2 days. Her sources told her that High Matriarch Celine had threatened him. She expected him to keep his distance now. Everyone always kept their distance eventually. But then she saw him. He stood with the human delegation near the eastern pillars. And when their eyes met across the crowded room, he smiled at her. It was a warm smile, full of something she could not name. The ceremony began with traditional gift-giving. One by one, noble houses approached the throne and presented tributes to Emperor Thaler. Rare gems, ancient artifacts, promises of loyalty wrapped in pretty words. The Emperor accepted each gift with practiced grace. Then Ambassador Park Jun-seo stepped forward. "Your Majesty," he said in a clear voice that carried through the hall, "I request permission to present humanity's gift." The Emperor nodded. "You may proceed, Ambassador." The crowd murmured with curiosity. Humans were new to galactic politics. Their gifts were always interesting. Park walked to the center of the room. He carried nothing in his hands. "No box, no artifact, no treasure." "Your Majesty," Park began, "humanity does not bring gold or gems today. Instead, we bring something more valuable. We bring an action." Confusion rippled through the crowd. Even the Emperor raised an eyebrow. Park took a deep breath. He had rehearsed this moment 100 times. He knew what it would cost him, but some things were worth any price. Under both human law and Valorian law, Park announced, "I hereby make a formal declaration. I, Park Jun-seo of Earth, petition for the right to pursue a bonding courtship with Princess Alith Verthan." Silence, complete and total silence. Then the hall exploded. Nobles shouted in outrage. Some laughed in disbelief. Others simply stared with open mouths. High Matriarch Celine looked like she had been slapped across the face. "This is impossible." Someone shouted. "A human cannot bond with imperial blood," cried another. "This violates sacred traditions." Emperor Thaler raised his hand. The chaos quieted, but barely. "Ambassador Park," the Emperor said slowly, "do you understand what you are requesting?" "I do, Your Majesty." "You understand that no human has ever made such a petition." "I understand, but I also understand your laws. Any being of recognized sentient status may petition for courtship. Humanity was granted this status when we joined the Galactic Council. My petition is legally valid." The Emperor turned to his advisors. They whispered urgently among themselves. Finally, the chief advisor nodded reluctantly. "He is correct, Your Majesty. The petition is within legal bounds." Selene pushed forward. Her face was red with anger. "This is an insult to every noble house. This human mocks our traditions. He seeks to bond with cursed blood as some kind of joke." "It is no joke," Park said calmly. "I am completely serious." "Then you are a fool." "Perhaps, but I am a fool who follows your laws." The Emperor held up his hand again for silence. He looked at Park with an expression that was hard to read. Was it anger? Curiosity? Something else? "Ambassador," the Emperor said, "before I make any decision, there is one person we have not heard from." All eyes turned to Alith. She stood frozen in her corner. Her heart was pounding so hard, she thought everyone must be able to hear it. She had not known. Park had not told her. He had made this declaration without warning her. Park walked toward her. The crowd parted before him like water. When he reached her, he spoke quietly, but in the silent hall, everyone could hear. "You can refuse. This is your choice, Alith. You owe me nothing, but I wanted them to know something. I wanted them to know that someone sees your worth. I wanted them to know that their blindness is not the truth." Elith's eyes filled with tears. Not sad tears, something else. Something she had not felt in years. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this? You will destroy your career. You will make enemies of every noble house. Because it is right. Because you deserve better than shadows and silence. Because," he paused, "because you matter to me, Alith. You matter." Selene's voice cut through the moment. "Your Majesty, I demand that you reject this petition. It is an insult to the Empire." The Emperor stood. He was tall and imposing, with markings that blazed like fire. He looked at Selene. He looked at the assembled nobles. He looked at his daughter, his little girl who had been rejected and humiliated and isolated for so long. And for the first time in years, he saw hope in her eyes. "The petition is legally valid," the Emperor announced. "I accept it." Gasps echoed through the hall. "Furthermore," the Emperor continued, "any interference with this courtship will be considered a personal offense against the imperial throne. Ambassador Park has shown courage that many of you lack. He has reminded me that worth is not measured in the brightness of one's markings." Celine looked like she might explode. But even she did not dare challenge the Emperor directly. The celebration continued, but everything had changed. Nobles whispered in corners. Alliances shifted. The political landscape of the entire empire had been altered by one human's bold declaration. Later that night, Aleph found Park on a balcony overlooking the city. The moons hung low and bright in the sky. "You should have warned me," she said. "Would you have let me do it if I had?" She considered this. "No. I would have tried to stop you. I would have said it was too dangerous. That is why I did not warn you." Aleph moved to stand beside him. Their shoulders almost touched. "You know this changes everything," she said. "You have made yourself a target. Celine will not forgive this. The noble houses will look for ways to destroy you." "I know. And you did it anyway." Park turned to face her. In the moonlight, his eyes were soft. "Aleph, I have spent my whole life playing it safe. I followed rules. I avoided conflict. I climbed the diplomatic ladder one careful step at a time. But watching you walk out of that ceremony, seeing your courage in the face of such cruelty, it woke something in me." "What do you mean?" "I mean that some moments define us. Some choices matter more than careers or safety. You deserved someone to stand up for you. I am just glad I could be that someone." Aleph reached out and took his hand. Her faded markings glowed softly against his human skin. "Thank you," she said. "No one has ever fought for me before." "Then everyone else was blind," Park replied. "Because you are worth fighting for." They stood together in the moonlight. Behind them, the Empire churned with new chaos. Ahead of them lay challenges and dangers they could barely imagine. But in that moment, none of it mattered. In that moment, there was only the two of them, and the beginning of something neither had expected to find. The weeks following Park's declaration were unlike anything the Valorian Empire had seen in centuries. The human ambassador had thrown a stone into a still pond, and the ripples were spreading in every direction. Some ripples brought hope. Others brought danger. Trade negotiations between humanity and the Empire suddenly stalled. Contracts that had been nearly complete were delayed indefinitely. Noble houses used their influence to create obstacles at every turn. The message was clear: withdraw the courtship petition or suffer the consequences. Ambassador Kang Minji, Park's superior, called him to her office on a cold morning. Her face was tired, and her voice was strained. "Jumseo," she said, "I have orders from Earth Command." Park stood at attention. He already knew what was coming. "They want me to withdraw the petition." "Yes. The political pressure is damaging our position. Several important agreements are at risk. Earth Command believes the cost is too high." "And what do you believe?" Ambassador Kang sighed. She walked to her window and looked out at the Valorian capital. "I believe you did a brave and good thing. I believe that Princess deserves better than what her people gave her. But I also believe in following orders. I am required to pass this message to you." Park nodded slowly. "I understand. But I cannot comply." Kang turned to face him. "You realize what this means? I do. I am prepared to resign my position. Jumseo, my career is not worth more than doing what is right. If Earth Command wants me to abandon Aleph, then I cannot remain in diplomatic service." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a data chip. His resignation letter was already written. Can looked at the chip for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. I was hoping you would say that. It would have broken my heart if you had agreed. You are not angry? Angry? I am proud of you. You have shown the galaxy what human character looks like. Even if it costs us politically, we have gained something more valuable. We have shown that humans stand by their principles. She took the chip, but did not activate it. I will delay processing this for as long as I can. Perhaps things will change. But for now, go to your princess. Let her know what you have sacrificed. Park found Aleph in the Imperial Gardens. She was sitting by the moontia flowers, their special place. When she saw his face, she knew something was wrong. What happened? She asked. Earth Command ordered me to withdraw my petition. I refused. I submitted my resignation instead. Aleph stood up. Her eyes were wide with shock. You gave up your career? It was not much of a choice. I could not abandon you. Not now. Not after everything. But your position, your future, everything you worked for, means nothing if I have to betray someone I care about to keep it. Aleph stared at him. This man had given up everything for her, a woman he had known for only a few weeks. A woman his world saw as a foreign alien. A woman her own people called cursed. Why? She whispered. We barely know each other. We are from different worlds. Why would you sacrifice so much for me? Park stepped closer. He took her hands in his something that would have scandalized any watching Valorian. Because in all my travels across the stars, I have never met anyone like you. Because your courage inspires me. Because when I am with you, I feel like I am finally doing something that matters. He paused and looked into her amber eyes. Because I think I am falling in love with you, Aleph. And love does not count costs. Aleph felt tears running down her cheeks. No one had ever said such words to her. No one had ever looked at her the way Park was looking at her now. She pulled him into an embrace. For a long moment, they simply held each other. I think I am falling in love with you too, she whispered. But their peace was short-lived. 3 days later, High Matriarch Selene made her move. She appeared before the Imperial Court and invoked an ancient right, the trial by advocacy. By the laws of our ancestors, Selene announced, any courtship petition may be challenged through ritual trial. The petitioner must prove their worth through tests of body, mind, and spirit. I invoke this right against Ambassador Park. The court erupted in murmurs. The trial by advocacy had not been used in over a century. It was considered obsolete, a relic of a more brutal era. Emperor Thaler frowned. This trial was designed for Valorian physiology. It would be unfair to subject a human to these tests. The law makes no exception for species, Selene replied with a cold smile. If the human wishes to bond with an imperial princess, he must prove himself worthy, unless he wishes to withdraw his petition. All eyes turned to Park. He knew what Selene was doing. The trials were designed to be difficult for Valorians. They would be nearly impossible for a human. She expected him to refuse and lose face, or accept and fail. I accept the challenge, Park said. Gasps filled the room. Even Aleph looked alarmed. Park, no. She called out. These trials could kill you. Then I will die proving my love for you. But I will not give Selene the satisfaction of seeing me run. The Emperor raised his hand for silence. Very well. The trial by advocacy will commence at dawn in 3 days. May the ancestors guide the outcome. That night, Crown Prince Varith Vorthan came to Park's quarters. He was Ela's eldest brother, tall and stern, with the brightest markings in the imperial family. Ambassador Park, he said, I come with information that could help you. Park was surprised. The Crown Prince had never spoken to him before. Why would you help me? Varad's expression softened slightly. Because of my sister. Since you entered her life, she has changed. She smiles now. She laughs. She has hope again. I have not seen her this happy since we were children. He handed Park a data tablet. This contains details about the 3 trials you will face. The caverns of resonance, where sound becomes a weapon. The march of ancestors, where psychic projections attack your mind. And the truth before the eternal flame, where lies are burned away. Park studied the information. Each trial seemed more dangerous than the last. These tests seem impossible for a human. They are designed that way. Selene chose well. But humans have survived impossible odds before. That is what the galaxy says about your species. Vareth moved toward the door, then paused. My sister smiled for the first time in years because of you. Do not fail her, Park. Do not let her hope die again. After the prince left, Park sat alone with his thoughts. He reviewed the trial information again and again. The challenges were severe. His chances were small. But he thought of Elith's face. He thought of her courage. He thought of the way she looked at him like he was the first person to ever truly see her. He would not fail. He could not fail. He sent a message to Dr. Yoon and asked her to come immediately. If he was going to survive these trials, he would need human ingenuity on his side. Science had helped him understand Elith's curse was actually a gift. Perhaps science could help him survive what was coming. Dawn was 3 days away. 3 days to prepare for the fight of his life. 3 days to prove that human love was stronger than ancient tradition. Dawn came cold and gray on the day of the trials. The arena had been prepared in the ancient tradition stone walls covered in sacred symbols. Thousands of spectators filling the stands. Every noble house had sent representatives. The entire empire would witness this moment. Park stood at the entrance to the first trial, the Caverns of Resonance. These underground chambers were designed to produce sound frequencies that could shatter Valorian nerve clusters. For a human, the effects would be even worse. The sound waves could rupture eardrums, cause internal bleeding, or simply drive a person mad with pain. But Park had prepared. In his ears sat small devices that Dr. Yoon had created synthesized, dampeners that would filter the most dangerous frequencies. It was not perfect protection, but it might be enough. You do not have to do this, Alith said. She stood beside him, her face pale with worry. Yes, I do. For you, for us? He kissed her forehead, a gesture that made the watching crowd gasp in shock. Then he walked into the darkness. The caverns were a nightmare. Sound came from everywhere, screaming tones that stabbed into his skull like knives. Even with the dampeners, the noise was overwhelming. Park fell to his knees more than once. Blood trickled from his ears where the dampeners could not block everything. But he kept moving forward. He thought of Elith's face. He thought of her smile. He thought of the life they could have together. Step by step, he fought through the sonic assault. When he finally emerged from the far end of the caverns, he was covered in blood and barely able to stand. But he was standing. The crowd fell silent. Even Selene looked surprised. No one had expected the human to survive the first trial. Alith rushed to his side, but the rules forbade her from helping. She could only watch as Park wiped the blood from his face and forced himself upright. 1 down, he said with a weak smile. 2 to go. The second trial was the March of Ancestors. Park had to walk through a long corridor filled with psychic projections. These projections were designed to attack the mind, showing visions of failure, shame, and despair. They were meant to break a person's spirit before they reached the end. The Valorians expected Park to see nothing. Humans had no psychic sensitivity. They assumed he would walk through an empty corridor while the projections passed through him harmlessly. They were wrong. As Park walked into the corridor, figures began to appear around him. But they were not Valorian ancestors, they were human. He saw his grandmother, who had survived a war-torn childhood. He saw his father, who had worked 3 jobs to send him to school. He saw generations of humans who had endured famines and plagues and disasters. These were his ancestors. And they were not trying to break him. They were giving him strength. "Walk forward," his grandmother whispered. "We survived." "You will survive." "Show them what humans are made of," his father said. "Show them our strength." Park walked through the corridor with tears streaming down his face. He was surrounded by the spirits of everyone who had come before him, everyone who had fought and struggled and refused to give up. Their courage flowed into him like fire. When he emerged from the other end, he was crying but unbroken. The crowd was stunned. The psychic readers in the audience had sensed what happened. They had seen the human ancestors. They had felt the power of that connection. "Impossible," someone whispered. "His ancestors came to him," said another in amazement. Celine gripped the railing in front of her. This was not going as planned. The humans should have failed by now. The final trial remained, truth before the eternal flame. Park was led to a platform in the center of the arena. There, a pillar of white fire burned without fuel, the eternal flame, which had blazed for 10,000 years. This fire could sense lies. Any falsehood spoken before would cause the speaker to burn. Park knelt before the flame. The heat washed over him, but it did not hurt, not yet. "Speak your truth," the Emperor commanded. "Tell us why you seek to bond with Princess Aleth." Park looked at the flame. He looked at Aleth, who stood among the crowd with tears in her eyes. He looked at the thousands of Valorians who had come to see him fail. Then he spoke. "I love her. Not for politics. Not for alliance. I love who she is when no one is watching. I love her courage, the way she faces cruelty with dignity. I love her kindness, the way she tends her flowers and sees beauty in hidden things." The flame flickered but did not burn him. "I want to spend my life earning the right to stand beside her. I know I am not worthy, not yet. But I will spend every day trying to become worthy. Because she deserves someone who will fight for her. She deserves someone who sees her true value." His voice grew stronger. "You called her cursed. You rejected her because of marks on her skin. But those marks are not a curse. They are a sign of strength. Your scientists were wrong. Your traditions were wrong. And I refuse to let those mistakes define her future." The flame blazed brighter, but still it did not burn. "I am just a human. I have no great powers. I have no ancient bloodline. But I have something more important. I have love, real love. The kind that does not count costs or calculate advantages. The kind that sees a person for who they truly are." He raised his voice for all to hear. "And I declare before this flame, before your ancestors, and before the galaxy, I love Aleth Verthan. I will love her until my last breath. And nothing you do can change that." The flame roared and then grew calm. Silence fell over the arena. The flame had not burned him. Every word he spoke was true. Slowly, Aleth walked forward. No one stopped her. She climbed onto the platform and took Park's hands. She pulled him to his feet. Then she turned to face the Empire. "I accept this human," she declared. "Not because he passed your trials. I accept him because he showed me something I had forgotten. That worth is not measured in markings or bloodlines. It is measured in choices. It is measured in courage. It is measured in love." Emperor Thaler rose from his throne. He walked down to the platform, something an emperor never did. He removed his ceremonial sash and placed it around Park's shoulders. "Welcome to the Imperial family, Park Juncio of Earth. You have proven yourself more worthy than many who were born with every advantage. The crowd erupted not in protest, but in cheers. The tide had turned. The human had done what no one believed possible. He had shown the Valorians that their ancient traditions were built on lies. Selene stood alone, abandoned by her allies. Her power, built on prejudice and fear, had crumbled in a single day. News of the bonding spread across the galaxy. Humanity's reputation transformed overnight. They were no longer just newcomers. They were the species that saw worth where others saw weakness. They were the species that fought for what was right. 3 years passed. Park and Alice stood together in the Imperial nursery. In Elith's arms lay their daughter, a beautiful child with silver hair and faded markings, just like her mother. "She will face challenges," Alice said softly. "Some will still call these markings a curse." "Then we will teach her the truth," Park replied. "We will teach her that she is a gift, just like her mother." A servant appeared at the door. "Your Highnesses, the noble houses are arriving for the child's presentation ceremony. There are 17 petitions for future courtship already." Park and Alice looked at each other and laughed. The curse had become a blessing. The rejected princess had become a beloved consort. And the human who had taken a bold step had changed the galaxy forever. All because he had looked at a lonely princess and seen not a curse, but a treasure worth fighting for. In the end, that was what humans did best. They saw what others missed. They fought for what others abandoned. They loved without conditions or calculations. And sometimes, one bold step was all it took to change everything.